Welcome to the Leadership Lovers Podcast. I'm your host, Will Gladhart, CMO at the Culture Think Tank. At the Culture Think Tank, we empower leaders with metrics that strengthen culture, drive performance, and return. We're here today to learn about the actions leaders have taken to address organizational change. Today, our guest is Jeff Huff, President at Crucial Rapid Response. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Let's begin by having you share with our audience a bit about yourself, your background, and also your organization.
Full disclosure, I'm a recovering hillbilly from Southwest Missouri, and that is my claim to fame, I guess. But it gave me the opportunity to grow up in a small community, learn values that are sometimes taken for granted. I grew up watching my mom work hard every day, go to work. So that hard work attitude comes from my mom, my grandma, my grandpa that way. I grew up in a small town, was able to join the Navy. And so I spent 6 years Naval Reserve, was in supply. It was not activated during Desert Storm, but was on call during that time. Was able to secure a job with FedEx when I was 19, moved to Kansas City and spent 17 years at that organization and watched it grow and flourish and develop. I grew from washing vans, loading trucks, going into operations, doing anything that I could for money as a young married person with a child, and then got to go into sales and found my passion. I love sales. I love being able to identify opportunities, marry those with the solutions that organizations that I've represented have. And then it made the transition to a company called Dentsply Sirona. It's a dental manufacturer, largest dental manufacturer in the world. So I went from transportation to teeth. Everybody was doing it at the time. And so I wanted to follow that trend. But I was at Dentsply for about 14 years and went from carrying a bag from dental office to dental office and then worked my way up into working with large organizations. I was trained by every division. There's 5, 6 divisions maybe now. Got to understand the dental world inside and out and grew as a person in my professional career. Also was able to get my MBA while I was there. So hillbilly with an MBA, I know that sounds pretty terrifying.
Dangerous, right?
Yeah, absolutely dangerous. And then owned my own business. My wife and I own Restoration Emporium as well. And I had KC Furnishing. And so was not just put a lot of the corporate skills that I had learned into entrepreneurial type of deal and did that for about 5 years. And then currently where I'm at is Crucial Rapid Response. It's a medical staffing organization focused primarily on responding to disasters, hurricanes, fires, tornadoes, those kind of things. We really support organizations that have called full wrap services. So they have the tents and the equipment, but their cadre of people are not big enough a lot of times for the size of those deployments. And so that's where we come into play. We also do what I call core staffing. And so we are working with hospitals, healthcare organizations in order to be able to fill that need that is especially significant right now, whether it's nurses, EMTs, behavioral tech, really heavy in the mental health aspect right now. And that's what I'm currently doing. I've been doing that for a little over a year now, and I'm absolutely utilizing everything I've learned from every stop along the way and just having a lot of fun doing it.
Well, that's great to hear. Well, you've definitely had a wide breadth of experience and in many roles. I look forward to your responses today. So we'll be discussing 3 questions. As a warm-up to start our conversation, would you share why you believe a healthy culture is critical?
It allows the organization to be able to just function, to be able to create the empowerment, the ability for people to do their job and not just to show up. We're working through performance evaluation season right now and talking to people their why. Why are they here? And it creates an understanding of if your corporate culture and what you're doing, the why is impactful. And your why is not just about the organization, but about them growing. That's key. And so really have worked very hard to make sure that is in place so that we can, whenever we're on a deployment and we have working around the clock a lot of times, that there's not that hesitancy of, okay, do I want to be involved? But it's like, I have to be involved. I want to do what it takes in order to be able to accomplish the task at hand.
Yeah, I think that's really a valid piece of information for other leaders is, not only the why, but also helping people understand their role and clarity, especially because you're in a high pressure, high stress situations, even more critical to have that alignment. It's been our experience that leaders tend to struggle in three key areas: people, process, or profit. In your role as a leader or this organization or others that you've worked in, which of those areas kind of presented a cultural challenge? And then also, how did you kind of go about solving it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't mention, but Crucial is a nonprofit organization. And so it went from a for profit to a nonprofit prior to when I was here. And so you can imagine the profit side of it, that it's still important, but it's not like the only thing we focus on. And the people are here, the people that are still here want to be here. And so I really looked at kind of the process side of it, is what things were in place or what needed to be adjusted, what needed to be updated or changed or eliminated in order for us to be successful. And so really in the first 90 days, I have issues, but I have 9 Ds that I go through. And each 30 days, those D words, alliteration is my love language, being able to go through that and identify who was there, why were there, what did they do, how did they interact with each other, how did that interaction, could it get better, what were the challenges inside of that, and then how did that play into all of the things that we needed to get done. Were we casting a vision? Were we fulfilling just our basic promise to our recruits and then to our facilities that we had contracts with? And so that first 90 days as a leader inside this organization were so important for me to be able to understand all of those things, and took copious notes. And what you would see as I went through it was there was consistencies. There were outliers here or there, things that somebody was important to them, but maybe not to the group. But I identified 5 to 6 things that were like, okay, if we solve these, have early wins as much as possible, and then be able to implement processes or programs, or whether it's communication or whatever it is, and implement those, and to be able to see success, to see that I'm not just here to make change, but I'm here to create opportunities for us to be successful. So I think that for me as a leader, and that first 90 days were so key, but then being able to take pieces of that, and that even today, some of those things are part of that vision for the next 1, 3, 5 years, and be able to cast that. And then it goes back to those first 90 days, and they're like, oh, wait, Jeff was listening to me. We weren't just meeting, but he was actually listening, and it made an impact on me so that we could be a better organization.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that's a valuable point for other leaders because one, 90 days being very critical, but also taking a micro look at every aspect of the organization and really understanding that, but then digesting it, turning around and communicating it back to staff that not only did you take the time to listen, but they were heard. And then those actions and next steps were taken. What was probably the one thing in that journey that helped impact your culture and performance positively across the organization?
The culture was almost a culture of can't. You can't do this, and can't
Yeah.
you can't
Yes.
accomplish this, and you can't do that. And so I wanted to create a culture of can. And so that was the biggest change in a lot of this. Was I had people like the business development team, and they can't go to conferences, and you can't support this, and you can't do that. It was very interesting. One of the first things we were talking about, they came to me almost apologetically asking, there's this account that has asked us to be involved in their golf tournament. I'm like, okay, I'm thinking big sponsorship or something like that. They asked for $150 so that they could go to it,
Wow.
apologizing. And I'm like, no. I go, what's the sponsorship levels? Let me know what that is. We'll provide a gift for the giveaways. We'll do this, this, and this. And it was almost like, no, wait a second. That first introduction to you can do this. You can make decisions. You can do these kind of things. And there was no previous leadership was working to put in budget because there was no budgets in place. So there was no performance reviews. There were no things like that. And so in order to help people understand that they can do things, each department implemented and presented their budgets to me so that we could project ahead, so that we could say in the first quarter we're doing this, second quarter doing that, so that they don't have to come to me and ask for $150 for a golf tournament. They have the ability to make decisions on things like that. So changing that mindset from a can't culture to a can culture was the key.
Wow, that's a great story, but also a great testament to leadership and yourself to be able to not only empower people to look at where the gaps were of why they couldn't and why that attitude of can't had been pervasive versus them being empowered by having a budget or whatever those resources was to make the decisions and make the next step. As we wrap up today, is there anything else you'd like to add or share with fellow leaders?
Yeah, kind of on that can culture, if I can. What that does, it empowers people, and then that empowerment allows them to provide ideas and solutions, and then that creates efficiency, and that allows me to be the visionary, to be able to provide the vision, which means we go back to the top. It empowers them, ideas. So it feeds itself, and so you can go from little wins to buy-in, and it goes to us and we, and the why is explained. So I would just encourage to really dig in and understand what's the history, where you at currently, and then know that even the biggest challenges can be overcome with intentional efforts and being able to invest in others. And the most important thing is, you see people in meetings, the leaders, and they're on their phone and they're approving and doing this. That's for me, I see that as being somebody that maybe hasn't empowered. They haven't given them their employees the ability to that can attitude. Free up you by empowering them is what I would say.
Yeah, well, that definitely speaks to, as you mentioned, empowerment, but also innovation, performance, all those things across the board that, as you said, can transform the entire organization, not only attitudinally, but also financially. So, Jeff, I've enjoyed having you on our Leadership Lovers podcast today. Thank you so much for your insights.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us on the Leadership Lovers podcast. Find all our Leadership Lovers episodes on the Culture Think Tank website at www.theculturethinktank.com or listen on your favorite streaming platform. We'd love to hear from you about the challenges you have faced as a leader. Tune in weekly as we invite leaders to share their experiences in strengthening culture and performance, one action at a time.